Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Lauren Hersey. How are you tonight, Lauren?
You know, Jim, I can't complain. The sun is shining. I'm upright. So it's a good day. How about you?
The sun is shining and you're upright. I'm sorry, that's kind of a low bar.
Listen, it only goes up from there,
okay,
right?
Excellent point. All right, just sort of like, yes, I'm blinking and breathing. What else do you want?
Anything fun going on in your world, Mr. Hill?
Are you familiar with the concept of, you're okay? Again, I'm sure the collectors who listen to this podcast will get this, but you're okay if you have just 2 of something. But as soon as you have 3 of something, it's a collection.
Okay.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to collect stamps. I really didn't. Okay. All right. But here's the thing. Earlier this year, and I'm showing these to Lauren now, these are my Betty White stamps. Right.
That's a lot of Betty White.
Well, I bought a...
Why do you have so many?
Well, you have to buy a page of Betty White.
Oh.
And here's the thing, that I want to say 2 years ago, when they had Star Wars droid stamps, I bought a page of droid stamps.
I see them. Can I see your book?
Well,
he's showing me a...
but that's the thing. I had to, because I bought these pages. Suddenly I needed things to put the pages in, and then I needed a book to put the pages in. And now, I only have 4 pages, but I spent $10 on the pages to slide the stamps into. I spent $18 on the lovely book to put the pages in. And each of the pages of stamps, I want to say, are $12 a piece. So I'm like $100 in.
Where were you this week when I was sending out Hunter's graduation invitations? I could have used a little Betty White.
Okay.
I think I just got American flags and maybe some wildflowers at the UPS
there we
store.
Go.
Not nearly as fun as Star Wars and Betty White, I must say.
And the worst part of it is while I was at the post office, the postmistress is like, oh, yeah, hang on, I'll get you your Betty White stamps. And she's digging through a thing, and suddenly Buzz Lightyear stamps come up. And it's like, ooh, where did, no, nobody bought these in 2002. They were tied to that Buzz Lightyear movie that Pixar made that nobody wanted to see. And it's like, well, now I want those. So now I have 4. I spent basically $30 to have something to put the stamps that I bought in. And now I have a stamp collection. And it's like, oh, come on, Jim. Show a little restraint.
Listen, these are your people that are listening to this. We have all been there, right, with these unintentional collections. Ask me how many Loungeflies I have.
Okay.
And none of them are just right. By the way, I found the perfect Disney backpack at our last trip, just saying.
Oh, wow.
I think my Loungefly, the search, I think, might be over for the perfect Disney backpack.
Okay. At some point, then, you are going to have to share. I need...
But, if I have, more than 10, is it a collection?
I think when it's more than 10 and they're Loungefly, I believe the phrase you're looking for is obsession. But, again, I'm sure they are all lovely.
All right. Well, what else is lovely is we have a jam-packed show today. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking about some behind-the-scenes experience that I had, some interesting new merch trends that I spotted while we were down in Florida last week. Mm-hmm. And later in the show, Jim is going to be taking us into today's feature as we are celebrating one of our favorite Disney dinos, not from Animal Kingdom, but from Hollywood Studios. Studios. And that dinosaur is Gertie and some of the brand new merch associated with Gertie. Is Gertie a boy dinosaur or girl dinosaur? Gertie's kind of gender neutral, right?
I want to say she's a girl. But don't make me lift up her tail. All right. Anyway, this sounds like a packed show, Lauren. But before we get to this, it's worth mentioning you are just a week removed from your big Florida trip. So how was that?
Yeah, it was great. So we mentioned at the top of the show, got back last Sunday, so really Easter, and we did 2 Universal days. We had, I think, 4 Disney, and then we got to go to Epic. So, and I was like, every time I go to Florida, of course, I am in every gift shop, like just trying to get, some inspo for things that like I might not be aware of. So that was really fun. Would not recommend anybody going the week of Easter if you have any other options.
It is so interesting you say this because my sister and I have been planning to go to Dollywood for years. And this year it's finally going to happen. But we are doing the week between Christmas and New Year's, which, by the way, is what the locals refer to as Hell Week.
Oh.
So, and that's the thing. Everybody's like, really? You want to go then? And it's like, I have no choice. My sister, who is a teacher, has to be back at her school in the first week of January. So it's like, mind you, she's retiring in a year or two. So maybe I can persuade her to kick the can on Dollywood. But anyway, all right.
I mean, do it. I can't wait to hear about it. And I wish I could just pack myself in your luggage because Dollywood is on my bucket list. We've talked about it.
There we go.
Okay, so just a quick updates for some of the fun things that we saw and got while we were there. So first 2 days were Universal because we were blocked out. The other days for Disney. Eric, finally, we just pulled the trigger on the retro windbreaker. Did you appreciate my photos I put into?
I do. First of all,
before the show.
This is my first opportunity to see Go-Go, and she looks lovely. But on the other hand, yeah, Eric's retro, boy, those are some 90s colors, aren't they?
Oh,
wow.
Listen, the jacket is epic, but I tried to wear it the next day. So first day we're at Universal Studios proper, then we went to Islands of Adventure, and it is very, very long. So if you're a petite person, maybe the retro windbreaker, not for you.
Okay.
But it makes a statement, that is for sure.
Yeah. That look at me from a quarter of a mile away. That's a very interesting statement. You can see me. So
you certainly can.
Yeah.
Okay, so then going to the AP annual pass exclusive merch opportunities, there were 2 I wanted to highlight.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you're aware, but the pass holder days for Disney are coming up the beginning of May to almost the end, I think May 22nd. Well, Universal is getting on the bandwagon and doing pass holder appreciation days. So we were there outside of that time, but they did have 2 different merch opportunities for AP. So at Universal Studios, across from in the big hat, what's the hat called?
Oh, the brown derby. The brown derby.
The brown derby. Yes. They had that open as an AP exclusive merch store. It was so cool because they had items that were in the actual gift shops right now for 50 to 75% off.
Oh.
So that was a really, really nice surprise. So we had to go back, and I did buy I bought a Despicable Me long sleeve shirt. I got Lady that Malfoy that I think I put a picture of Maybe not, because we always make fun of her with her blonde hair. But we got a handful of items there. Next day, we were over at Islands of Adventure, and they have a pass holder lounge, and they always have some type of discounted merch situation in there. Not a ton, but, a good deal. So Lainey and Miles that day decided that they were going to go on the water rides at Islands of Adventure, but neither one wore Crocs. So we had to purchase them across the way from the water rides, like the sandals that you're going to spend $30 for a pair of flip-flops because you're dumb and didn't bring your Crocs. So we did it. And they both got wet. And so after we were in the shop and Lainey's shirt was soaking wet. So she ended up with a nice 75% off. I think a 50 or 75% off Deadpool shirt and this giant Loungefly Deadpool Wolverine Loungefly that you're seeing. So pretty good deals. We were making fun and saying she was the world's biggest Deadpool fan because she had a Deadpool backpack and top and has never seen the movie.
Oh, well, there we go. I'm a brand ambassador for a thing I don't know. All right.
Yes. Yeah. So other new interesting things, we talked about going to Epic, lots of great merch there. If you're interested in hearing all about that trip and the merch, that is on patreon.com/JimHillMedia. Check it out there. And I got to go to the new DVC lounge at Magic Kingdom. So lots of new experiences.
Oh, cool. Okay. But did we have a favorite?
Of all the experiences, I think that honestly, it was something that happened because of this show. And that is the behind the scenes thing that I was teasing earlier that I'm going to tell you about right after we thank our sponsor.
Okay, then let me get to that. Okay, planning a Disney trip, it can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Be Our Guest Vacations takes care of all the details, park reservations, dining, and more, so you can focus on the fun. And their expert travel planners offer personalized service at no extra cost to you. Whether it's a Disney cruise, a trip to the parks, or another magical destination, they'll handle everything. So visit beourguestvacations.com to start planning your next adventure today. All right, so you were teasing something. Let's find out what you were teasing about.
All right, so I actually got to visit property control. Ooh. And this, so most people probably don't know what that is because I did not, unless you're a Disney cast member. But this came out of a make good from me complaining on the show about not being able to get into the Imagineering pop-up. And so what happened, Jim?
Well,
how did this happen?
Again, our mutual friend Nate felt bad that you got aced out of the thing that was over at the Coronado. Is that right? The Imagineering pop-up store. And so he's like, well, I'll tell you what. Instead of doing that, why don't we go someplace that only cast members get to go? And that, again, it is property control, which is, I guess, the polite way to say this is where merch goes before it goes to the character warehouse or after. I to be honest, I'm not sure.
I don't know, because it is definitely a different experience than what ends up at the character warehouse. So from what I, Googled pre the show, not me going there, but it says that they sell discounted merchandise, which definitely damaged package items, overstocked, used resort furniture, old signage, retired costumes, and sometimes park used props, which now makes so much sense. It's odd, but when you had reached out when I was in Arizona and said, would you be interested? I was like, heck yeah, like never even like looked at it. And then Nate and I started texting, and we text all the way down to Florida. And I was just like, we were like instant besties, like-minded people liking similar things. It was great. Well, I just never even thought to, Google it or see what I was getting myself into. But he was lovely. So just to give you kind of recapping the experience, and you've been to property control with Nate, right?
It's been a while. I think the last time Nate took Nancy, and I did have to wear a truss to carry everything that she purchased onto the plane on the way home. You, by the way, based on the photos you shared with, you were no slouch either. So.
Oh, no. Okay, so the day of, Nate said we should get there, before 9 is when it opened. And if you were going to go there, it's not somewhere that you drive by. It honestly kind of looks like a warehouse. And from the map that I looked at, it looks like it's behind Animal Kingdom, like Kilimanjaro Safari, like behind that. Would you say that that's in the area? It's called Recycle Way.
Interesting. And this tells you how long it's been since
I've been
to property control, because when I last went to property control, I want to say it was it was at the Cast Center out behind the Magic Kingdom. So.
Oh, yeah. So it must have moved, because this was nowhere near.
Okay.
In my Disney brain, like this was nowhere near the Magic Kingdom.
Okay.
And maybe they needed a bigger space because this was huge. So we got there and like we rope drop it, and there were probably, 12 people there as well that went in. Well, I had no idea what to expect. So like walking in, the first thing I saw, they had the old artwork from the Yacht and Beach Club, and they had like a smaller one, which I'm 5'3", which would have been slightly shorter than me. But then they had a larger one, which would have been taller than me, just to give you some context as to how big these pieces of artwork were. And the small ones were $5 and the large ones were $10. And I was like, how can I get these back to West Virginia?
Okay.
I knew that Eric was not going to appreciate that. But that was the first thing that I saw. And then there were all these life-size, like I got to see a life-size like Sports Goofy and, the crone from Snow White, like over, so there are all these like prop types of things. Mouse gear, like the original signs, like the signs from the parking lots, like the purple and yellow and red. Like I was so excited to see all that I wasn't really focused on like the merch at first, because I was just immersed by the surroundings. And so I saw that like all these ladies were digging in these like big black bins. And I'm like, well, I have a new friend. Like, I'm not going to be that person. Like, hey, friend, like, want to watch me dig in some bins? So we just kind of like kept walking. And I did see like some Keurigs and different things, like filing cabinets and, desks that were in the resorts. And so we go into the second room, and I mean, they had t-shirts that were down to $1.99. And the craziest thing to me was you could actually buy the frozen food that they sell in the parks. So like chicken tenders or like Uncrustables, or like you could buy like a 50-pound bag of rice. Like, and I think it's probably more to give cast members like an affordable way to buy food. As well. That's like the only thing that I could think of as to why they were selling like that, the types of the food that they were. But there were like cruise lines and holidays, and some items you could get a pretty good understanding as to why they were there. But I was picking stuff up, and then Lainey and my mother, Go-Go, they came over, and Lainey was eyeing up these like baseball jerseys, and they were like $80 in the park. And she's like, Mom, there's a 75% off bin for things that are actually in the park right now. And like, I'm following this woman around to see if she'll put her jersey down. And this woman's on the phone and she has it on and she's walking back and forth, and Lainey is being like a total stalker. But she ends up putting it back. And there were actually two. So Lainey is like beside herself. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, Nate, I need to be that person. Like, I need to go like bin diving.
Okay.
To see what's over there. So we ended up with some, pretty fun items from that. Did I sent you the picture of Eric in the Star Wars? What's the little furry monkey guys?
Oh,
what's it called?
Salacious Crumb. Yes. From Star Wars Return of the Jedi. Jabba the Hutt's creepy little friend.
Yes. So Eric was thrilled to get to that little friend, and I got a Disney nature book. Not a ton of books, I must say. But when we got to the checkout, it was you could only get 5 items from the bin. And what was in the bin was things that were in the out in the shops right now that maybe were returned or had like a slight, a snag or a little mark or something. So they marked them as damaged. But I mean, there were definitely things that were $75, $80 in the shops. So we maxed out that. But it was a really, really, really cool experience. I want to publicly thank Nate for that. And I will say that I did see a few Imagineering shirts in the parks, but they were the exact same, except for one teeny tiny slight difference that we got at D23. So
okay,
I'm over it. And Nate made it better.
Well, cool. All right. Well, I'm so glad you got that opportunity both to go backstage and also to experience a sort of a cast member only moment. And that's the other thing that's interesting is that there are times of year that property control will allow cast members to bring friends and family in. And this was one of those moments. So thanks again to Nate. And now from there, is this the day you went over to the studios, Disney's Hollywood Studios?
Yes, it was, because we went there first thing, took a little break, and then we had to get over to Hollywood Studios, if nothing else, but to experience Muppets 3D one more time. And we did the whole experience, had to go eat at Mama Melrose, even though historically that food makes me sick. I did get some buttered noodles.
Oh, okay.
They were delicious.
Okay.
A+ Mama Melrose.
Okay.
But while we were there, because we got there later in the afternoon, and things were really busy, like I mentioned, with the Easter holiday. So, I mean, good thing Muppets never has, much of a line, but we did go through that, and that put us in, more of a position where, I don't know, I think Disney has got it down with the lines. Even if it wasn't busy, we're gonna, make the line's super long so that you spend time eating and shopping and going to Starbucks. So when I was looking in it was one or two of the shops had new Gertie merch, which I've never seen Gertie merch.
Yeah, and I have to admit, Lauren shared a couple of images here, and it's what? We have a T-shirt, we have a coffee mug, we have a travel mug. It's
like a tumbler.
Tumbler, yeah, and
kind of. So you get at Starbucks.
Yeah, and it's actually a charming logo of Gertie herself. Licking a popsicle? Is that what I'm looking at here?
It looks like it. It says Dino Land Gertie's ice cream, and then it looks like I don't know. Does she have snow on her back?
Well,
or is that ice cream? What is that?
Well, I want to say they did that because in the park, Gertie is an ice cream stand. So the notion is that that's how she keeps your treats cold, is the snow on the back and on her head.
Oh, I guess I never connected the dots. Honestly, I didn't really know much about Gertie, like, even going into this. Like, doesn't she kind of look like the Loch Ness Monster of Hollywood Studios?
Well,
sorry, Gertie fans.
No. I mean, she's a fascinating character that has an amazing history. And when we get back from this break, folks, we're going to share that history with you.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. All right, folks, in the earlier portion of the show, Lauren was sharing about the fun new Gertie the Dinosaur merchandise, which, keys off of that park's ice cream stand, Dinosaur Gertie's Ice Cream of Extinction. And for those of you who don't know, this is that thing that stands at the edge of Echo Lake in that theme park. And by the way, Lauren talked earlier about shopping at Universal Studios Hollywood in that park's Brown Derby. And this is kind of an example of a certain type of architecture that was done in the 30s called California Crazy. I mean, the idea of a hat shop being inside of a giant hat, or in this case, you're getting ice cream out of a giant dinosaur that's got snow on it. Or if you make it out to the actual L.A., Lauren, which again, you and I and Eric are talking about for later this summer, you can go to Tale of the Pup, which is this hot dog shaped food stand, which has been in a bunch of locations in Southern California over the past 79 years. But
I support it. Go and eat it, a hot dog or shopping in a hat?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
More of that.
Well, now, mind you, what's cool about the Tale of the Pup, they really lean into it. I mean, for example, when you get your hot dog out of the, and you're buying a hot dog out of a building that's shaped like a hot dog, they hand it to you in a cardboard sleeve that's shaped like a wiener dog. And by the way, if it's a big menu, but I suggest getting the Piggy Pup. That's a hot dog garnished with bacon bits and raw onions. Mind you, you'll have terrible heartburn.
And bad breath.
Yeah, this is true. It's the raw onions, but the Piggy Pup is really great going down. But anyway, back to Dinosaur Gertie. Now, when I look at this building in Disney's Hollywood Studios, I don't just see the California Crazy aspect of it. What I see is, here's a discovery that excited the American public. back in the late 1800s. But this is also where that meets a brand new entertainment technology that's emerging around the same time. And then I also see an enterprising newspaper cartoonist who marries these two things and creates a vaudeville act that just wows people back in 1914, Lauren.
Okay.
But to tell the story properly, we got to start with that discovery, which was dinosaurs. Now, mind you, scientists have been unearthing these enormous skeletons of those ancient beasts as far back as 1824. But what really got America's attention, at least as far as dinosaurs were concerned, was the Great Bone War of 1877 to 1892. And you'll love this, Lauren, that this is when two preeminent paleontologists of this period, one Othniel Charles Marsh, who worked with the Peabody Museum of Natural History at Yale, and Edward Drinker Cope, who was associated with the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. These two guys were in direct competition with one another to see who could dig up the most fossils and then categorize the most new species of dinosaurs. And what was so funny is it was really the Wild West out there in the bone beds of Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado, with Cope and Marsh doing whatever they could to undercut their professional rival. And Lauren, this included bribery, theft, and the actual destruction of dinosaur bones that the other team of paleontologists had dug up. It was a wild.
I didn't realize it was so competitive, the world of bones.
Oh, well, so competitive that, look, HBO back in the 2010s actually planned to turn this story into a comedy that starred Steve Carell and James Gandolfini, and with the idea that Carell would play Cope and Gandolfini would play Marsh. Sadly, this TV movie never gets made. But back in the real world, these battling scientists discovered 130 different dinosaur species back in the day. But anyway, okay, we were talking about movie making a moment ago, which, by the way, only became possible in 1888 with the advent of celluloid film. And in the decade or so that followed this, Lauren, would-be filmmakers began experimenting with rudimentary forms of stop motion and hand-drawn animation. And speaking of drawing, around this very same time, newspaper cartoonist Windsor McCay begins making a name for himself. He's in his mid-30s at this point, and he's the cartoonist behind Little Nemo, which many people today consider to be the first popular comic strip to regularly run in a daily newspaper. So anyway, 1903, Windsor McCay joins the staff of the New York Herald, and it's while he's in the employ of that newspaper that McCay finds himself at the American Museum of Natural History, staring up at the skeleton of a Brontosaurus that is on display there. Now, here's the thing, Lauren. It took the museum staff 6 years to assemble this massive skeleton, which, by the way, built out of the bones of 4 different partial Brontosaurus skeletons, which in turn had been unearthed at the 9 Mile Crossing Quarry, which is 15 miles to the north of Laramie, Wyoming. Anyway, public had never seen anything like this Brontosaurus skeleton before. By the way, first goes on display February of 1905. This thing is more than 66 feet long, and at its highest point, it's 15 feet tall. And Windsor, just like so many other New Yorkers, it's just wow. He makes repeated trips to the American Museum of Natural History, where when he isn't churning out editorial cartoons for his new employer, which is newspaper baron William Randolphurst. But he'd go in and he'd stare up at this thing, wondering, what was it like when this thing was actually alive? What it would be like to see this thing move? And Windsor's interest in this Brontosaurus, well, It's now like Lauren and her Loungefly stuff.
And Jim and his Betty White stamps.
Yes, it's an obsession. Okay. So he starts bringing his sketch pad with him whenever he visits the American Museum of Natural History. And over months, he thoroughly documents how these individual bones fit together, and which then gives Windsor a kind of an understanding how it might have moved when it was alive. And now, remember, again, McCay makes his living as a newspaper cartoonist. More to the point, this is the pre-dawn era of hand-drawn animation. I mean, by that, Lauren, Coco the Clown, the first acknowledged popular animated cartoon character, he doesn't make his first appearance in an Out of the Inkwell cartoon for Max Fleischer till 1918. All right, so this is more than 5 years earlier. And after years of study of that Brontosaurus skeleton, and then some initial experimentation with how hand-drawn animation, how it might be created, Windsor McCay holds up in his drawing studio, and in between, again, assignments for William Randolph Hearst. And by the way, just a reminder, Hearst hired McCay to turn out editorial cartoons for his newspaper. Anyway, Windsor, with the help of an assistant, John Fitzsimmons, they produce 6,000 to 7,000 drawings, which, by the way, are all done in perfect perspective, which he then has recorded on celluloid film. And the end result, Lauren, is a 7-minute long hand-drawn cartoon, the likes of which no one has ever seen before, which stars Gertie, the wonderful trained dinosaur. And in fact, the vaudeville houses that present what McCay and Fitzsimmons had created promoted this genuinely unique entertainment as the greatest animal act in the world. So, picture this. It's February 1914. That's when this hybrid piece of entertainment has its world premiere at the Palace Theater in Chicago. And what audiences see is Windsor live on stage, seeming to interact with this animated dinosaur who's, up there on screen. And by the way, it should be noted here, Gertie is the very first animated character with personality. By that I mean, this animated dinosaur doesn't always follow all of McCay's commands. Not immediately, anyway. In between eating rocks and trees and occasionally dancing the tango, she sometimes snapped at her live on-stage master. And as I guess you might have already guessed, folks, Windsor is standing to the front of the stage, on stage in front of the screen, on which is being projected these 6,000 to 7,000 drawings of Gertie that he and Fitzsimmons had created. And McCay's on-stage performance is carefully choreographed down to the second, so that it then appears in perfect sync with whatever is happening up on screen. And what was cool is Windsor was enough of a showman that he would do things like he'd pretend to toss Gertie a full-size pumpkin as a treat. Now, mind you, Windsor would then palm this prop pumpkin just as the animated version appeared on screen and would then land in Gertie's mouth. And ever the showman, Windsor would appear on stage dressed in a tux and a tail, but he would also be wielding a whip, because remember, Gertie had been billed as the greatest animal act in the world, and McCay was leaning into that aspect, the notion that he'd have to do what lion tamers do, that sometimes you got to get their attention, you got to crack that whip. Okay, I bring up this specific aspect of Windsor McCay's act because, again, audiences in 1914 were amazed by Gertie. Demand was huge to see this animated dinosaur in action, which is why the Gertie the Dinosaur show was presented live 9 times a day during its Chicago run. Yeah, it started at 11:20 in the morning, and then there were performances right through till the one that started at 10 o'clock at night. And after this act's debut in Chicago, Windsor toured the country with his Gertie the Dinosaur show for much of 1914, 1915. which is when 13-year-old Walt Disney reportedly saw this vaudeville act when it passed through Kansas City, and reportedly never forgot it. Which brings me to a story that a Disney legend Ward Kimball once told me, which I'll share in a moment. But first, this.
It's almost Mother's Day, and you can now get anything you need delivered with Uber Eats. Well, almost anything. So no, you can't order a relaxing shower, but some beautiful flowers, you bet we deliver those. A bird bath? No. A bath bomb? Absolutely. It's no to a chocolate lab, but yes to some chocolate truffles. So whether it's a last-minute gift for Mother's Day, fresh groceries, or food from your favorite restaurants, get it delivered today with Uber Eats. Order now. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's best warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
And we're back. Okay, I back to the Gertie the Dinosaur story, and I want to share something that I learned from Disney legend Ward Kimball, and to explain how and when he told me the story. I used to live in Orlando in the mid-'90s, folks, and Ward, along with Mark and Alice Davis, had traveled to Walt Disney World to meet with the managers of the Disney Gallery, which was this spin-off of the Disney store chain that the company launched back in November of 1994. Anyway, Ward, Mark, and Alice were in town because they had created artwork for a new series of charger plates that the Disney Gallery was going to start selling soon, and more to the point, to support the launch of this line of charger plates, the Davises and Kimball were going to travel around the country and then do signings at the various Disney galleries. So this meeting down at Walt Disney World was kind of a get acquainted session, so the managers of the Disney galleries could then meet these Disney legends who'd soon be appearing at their stores. Anyway, so remember how I was describing Windsor McCay as he's doing his vaudeville act? He'd wield a real whip to seemingly get this animated dinosaur up there on screen to do a certain trick. And again, I want to remind you, when Windsor was traveling in the country in 1914, 1915, a very young Walt Disney, who would have been 13, 14 at the time, supposedly caught the act when it came through Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, you have the setup. Now, here's the story that Ward told me when me and the Davises, we had breakfast together when we were all down at Walt Disney World. And I want to say this is 96 sometime. So picture this, Lauren. It's the late winter, early spring of 1964, and Walt Disney is on a soundstage on the Disney lot. And he's shooting an intro to an upcoming episode of The Wonderful World of Color. To be specific, the episode of this TV show that's going to promote all of the attractions that the Imagineers just built for the 1964-1965 World's Fair. And so as part of this introduction, Walt's on a set that's made to look like a jungle, but there with him is one of the audio animatronic dinosaurs from the Ford Magic Skyway ride.
Okay.
All right, and he's wielding this riding crop as the Disney pretends to interact with this baby Brontosaurus. And by the way, I use the term baby loosely because when this animatronic's neck was erected, it was 5 feet tall, and from its snout to the tip of its tail, this baby Bronto was at least 10 feet long. Anyway, Walt's in the middle of rehearsing this scene when he stops and he smiles, and then he says to the crew, it's like, holy cow, I'm like Windsor McCay. I'm on stage with a Brontosaurus that I'm controlling with a whip. And now, mind you, the TV production crew that's surrounding Walt, they shoot this intro to The Wonderful World of Color. They're all guys in their 20s and their 30s. All right.
So they don't know what he's talking about.
Absolutely. Well, Windsor McCay died 3 decades earlier. He had a massive cerebral hemorrhage in July of 34. So just shy of his 65th birthday. So these people have no idea what Walt is talking about. But Ward Kimball, who, again, one of Walt's 9 old men, he was on the set that day. That was because Ward did a lot of the animated aspects of Disney's old Sunday night TV show on NBC. Well, he knew exactly what Walt was talking about. And as a student of animation history, he was familiar with McCay's work. More to the point, and I bring this up because this is something you folks really probably want to go check out on YouTube. Ward had helped produce The Story of the Animated Drawing, which was an episode of the Disney Weekly television series from the 2nd season of this TV show. In fact, this one aired on ABC back in November 55. But as part of this episode, Walt actually hired an actor to play Windsor McCay. And then they built an authentic recreation of a vaudeville stage right there in the Burbank lot. And then for this show, they recreated McCay's Gertie the Dinosaur act almost in its entirety. And by the way, you can see both of these things. You can see Walt interacting with an animatronic Brontosaurus and this detailed recreation of Windsor McCay's vaudeville act over on YouTube.
Oh, that's what we're watching tonight.
There we go.
Eric and I.
All right. Walt's particularly fun with the animatronic Brontosaurus. He treats it basically like you're a good boy. All right, so Windsor McCay is this animation pioneer back in the early, the mid 1910s. So why isn't he better known today? It's simple, Lauren. Remember how I mentioned that Windsor's boss was newspaper baron William Randolph Hearst. By the way, that titan of industry is who Orson Welles based the title character of Citizen Kane on. So gives you some idea of how powerful Hearst was back in the day. But anyway, remember, Hearst had hired McCay to be the editorial cartoonist for his newspaper syndicate. And so, and not to put too fine a point on it, just as Windsor was getting ready to go out on the road with his Gertie the Dinosaur vaudeville act, that was when World War I was just getting started over in Europe, July of 1914. And as that international conflict was heating up, Hearst gives McCay an ultimatum, which was, look, you signed a contract to do editorial cartoons for my newspaper syndicate. Now you're running around the country with this silly cartoon dinosaur, and I need you back here in New York so you can then do your job in a timely manner. Now, what was interesting is that McCay, while he was out performing on the vaudeville circuit, he was still regularly drawing editorial cartoons and then mailing them in to his editors at the Hearst newspaper syndicate. He'd actually draw these things backstage in his dressing room and then mail them back to Manhattan. But the problem was, because of the slowness of the U.S. mail back then, everything that Windsor was sending back to his bosses in New York City was getting there a week out of date. And which doesn't really work when you're doing an editorial cartoon, which is supposed to comment on the news of the day. So Hearst gives McCay an ultimatum to return to Manhattan and resume your job as an editorial cartoonist for my newspaper syndicate, or I will sue you. And to be fair here, Windsor had also learned by this point that life on the road, especially when you're doing 9 shows a day on the vaudeville circuit, can be lonely and tough, not to mention the hassle and expense of having to haul, the giant screen and special projector that you needed for the setup to make it appear as though Gertie the Dinosaur was live on stage with Windsor. So this is why McCay caves to his boss's demands. And after completing a tour of the American vaudeville circuit, returns to New York City and resumes his full-time duties as the primary editorial cartoonist for the Hearst newspaper syndicate. Now, kind of interesting, Lauren, a few years later, McCay tries to marry two of his passions, editorial cartooning and experimenting with animation, with a film that he then made about the sinking of the Lusitania. And for, face it, this is 1925. A lot of people don't remember the Lusitania, but back in May of 1915, a passenger vessel that was traveling from New York to Liverpool was sunk by a German U-boat. There were nearly 2,000 people on board when this attack of a civilian vessel happened, including 123 Americans, and less than 800 men, women, and children managed to make it into the lifeboats before the ship went down. And McCay and Hearst, his boss, were incensed by this attack, so much so that Windsor and his assistants, they spend the next 22 months hand animating a piece of film that then attempted to recreate this German U-boat's attack on the Lusitania. And here's the thing, Lord, it's a 12-minute long film, winds up being released to theaters by Universal Pictures in July of 1918, and I'm not going to lie, it's a piece of propaganda. By that I mean, we had the accounts of all the people who actually managed to make it into the lifeboats about what supposedly had happened, but there was no film footage that day. So Windsor's version of this tragic event is something that he is an animation assistant effectively made up, and it was deliberately drawn to be staged for the greatest possible dramatic effect. And this, by the way, is how it was advertised back in the day, the blood-stirring pen picture. And by the way, I love that language. That's how early animated films were described back in the day, as pen pictures. And anyway, this thing was supposed to burn in your brain forever. And I again, by the way, I know, folks, we've wandered quite a ways away from Gertie the Dinosaur, but I just wanted to give you an idea of who Windsor McCay was, more to the point, the impact he had on American history, not just entertainment history, but American history, because his sinking of the Lusitania short was what convinced a lot of Americans who were still kind of queasy about our country entering the war to end all wars in April of 1917, but especially since President Wilson had actually campaigned back in 1916 on the platform that he would keep our country out of that conflict. But it was this animated film that convinced a lot of people to get behind America's war effort, which, again, I know is quite a ways away from you standing in line at Dinosaur Gertie's Ice Cream of Extinction and then getting yourself a Mickey bar. But that's the thing, Lauren. That's the weird thing about entertainment history. It can go in lots of strange directions, and if I'm being honest here, I think the direction you and I should now be taking is bringing this week's show to a close. Do you agree?
I do. I think it's time we close up shop, and thank you for that. Not only Disney history lesson, but American history. So on that note, I think that it's time we wrap today.
Well, all right. Now, by the way, I want to point out, if you want to stay up to date about what's happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, be sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. So we post all the latest updates and news from our shows there, so you won't miss a thing. And if you're looking for even more insider Disney stories, check out our Patreon community. A lot happening over there, like Disney Unpacked, which is the video show that I do with Len Testa and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul.
Yes, and there was a bonus Disney dish this month. Eric and I did a bonus show. Jim, you did a fantastic bonus for our Patreon subscribers about the history of Super Soap Weekends. So if you're not currently in that community, I encourage you to check it out. But if you're not doing that and you have some time, leave us a review. It helps the show and means a lot.
Yeah, and if you've got questions or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. So you can reach out to us on social media or email us at jim@jimhillmedia.com. And Lauren, you're at lauren@laurenhersey.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.